We should be live in a couple of seconds. Thanks for bearing with us. Okay, Chair, you're live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking your time out to be here. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me on Zoom? Who's on Zoom? Anybody on Zoom? No? Okay. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so welcome to everyone who may or may not be viewing on YouTube. Elected members of the committee are able to join the meeting in person, are able to join remotely. However, they do not form part of the quorum, and they will not be able to vote, and their attendance will not be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. Anyone attending remotely will be able to turn their camera off. With regards to the meeting etiquette, please may I ask if you are there, if they do come, but they show their hands. The meeting of London Borough of Newham Crime and Environment and Transport Scrutiny Committee, and is now called to order. First of all, welcome everyone to be here, and thank you for spending your evening with us. It's going to be a really good meeting. Thank you, Sarah, for you and your team for being here tonight, and for Ali, the corporate director. We've got two sessions tonight: recycling, waste and street cleansing, and parks and green spaces. I'll take them in that order. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. We've got Louise Wilcox, Director of Public Realm, Anoop Gohal, Head of Parks and Green Assets, Jennifer Smith, Public Realm Service Coordinator, and for the recycling part, we've got Tracy Scott, Head of Street Scheme and Public Realm, Kelly Buckforth Evan, the Environmental Manager, Lindsay Smith, and Daniel Petropoli. How do I say it? Petropoli. Thank you. My apologies for not getting it right.
That's all right.
So that's on the structure of the meeting. Roughly about 50 minutes in the first part, and the second part is 50 minutes. What we will do in terms of structure, we've got 5 key themes for the first part, which is on parks and green spaces. I will do it in groups, and we'll do it in that way. It should be easier in that way. And we do it roughly the same way in the recycling, waste, and street cleansing bit. So apologies for absence. Councillor Nate Higgins is giving us apologies, and Councillor Danny Killing is his substitute. Any declarations of interest, any members from the committee? No? Okay. So first item on the minutes.
Chair, Councillor Pudis has sent her apologies.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Section 4, the minutes. Next item on the agenda is the minutes. To approve the minutes of our scrutiny meeting held on the 5th of October, are there any amendments or corrections that members would like to place? Simon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just the only thing I picked up on was the missing data on stop and search. Have we now got that information?
Okay, thank you. Right. Members may recall our commitment to follow up on the quorum of the meeting held on the 30th of January 24. Officers have confirmed that the following: the streaming indicates that Councillor Higgins, who was not a member at the time, Simon Rush and Councillor Paul were present in person, and Councillor Mercer joined in person at the end of part 1 of the meeting, before the second part focusing on the local plan. As a result, part 1 will be treated as an informal session. Part 2 constitutes the quorum meeting. Okay? For those who are not up with this, just have to do a little bit of business. Our quorum wasn't quite right. Regarding resolutions from October's meeting, they have been actively followed up, with some requiring longer timelines and scheduled for discussion at future meetings. A follow-up report will be provided in due course. Please note that the meeting was held relatively soon after the previous one. Can I move at the minutes of the meeting to be agreed our correct record, subject to amendments given by Councillor Rush?
Agreed.
Agreed. And can I say well done, Aaron, a really good set of minutes. And thank you, Artemis, for helping that meeting as well. For the first item, we're going to do parks and green spaces. The purpose of this item is to assess the effectiveness and outcome of the council's parks and green spaces strategy. Now, for the officers present, what we decided to do is to do it into 5 key areas to make it easier for everyone. The first part's going to be on master planning, finance and wider sustainability. Part 2 will be on biodiversity and climate. Part 3 will be health and its impacts. Part 4, metrics and performance. And the last one is play equipment and accessibility. Those are the 5 areas we're going to do. Okay. Please feel free, this is a discussion point. I tend to let the meeting flow. If I feel the officer is given an answer where it's not quite precise, I'll politely interrupt and ask you to answer the question. And likewise to my colleagues, I'll ask them to ask a question and not a statement. So to keep it going, all right? So on the first part will be on the master plan itself, the finances and the wider sustainability. But I will say before we start, the reports were excellent. Thank you very much for providing those. Spent a lot of time reading. They were very good. So if we don't ask a question, doesn't mean we haven't asked the question, because maybe you've answered it in the report. So well done to everyone. I know it's a lot of hard work here. Really appreciate it. So the first part, Councillor Garfield.
So the Beckton Parks Master Plan requires £70 million investment. That's not funded. So I just want to know what are the specific strategies to secure that money, and as works have already started, if we were to stop at this point, what would the costing be for that?
Okay, and then we're going to ask in groups of 3 for that bit. So, Carly.
So I had also had a question around the Vector Master Plan. Just adding to what Councillor Garfield has said. So we understand the requirements of the funds in order to get the master plan happening, but what's the contingency if external funding opportunities are not secured? And that's reference to section 6 of our papers. And also the other question I have is, are you able to elaborate on how community input has influenced the specific design interventions already completed under the Beckton Master Plan? And that's in section 5 of our papers.
Okay, any? Do Simon.
Thank you, Chair. It's similar to what members have already put across, but obviously with the budget cuts coming for 2025-26 or whatever, it looks like it's going to be 10% cut in parks. How's that going to impact, especially on the Beckton plan?
I'll bring him in next. Okay, any takers for those questions?
Okay.
Louise was head of parks, and she's acting up as director of public realm. She'll probably explain it a lot more eloquently than I can.
Thanks, Aled. Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, just to sort of to set the context around Beckton Parks master plans. So this is a piece of work that I led on. I think that actually commenced in 2021, and actually, as I say, has been a really long-term piece of work, culminating in the master plan being approved at Cabinet at the beginning of this year. So that was just over 2 years to develop that piece of work. It's been extensive. Obviously, there's been lots and lots of comms. I think we took the report and updates on sort of progress to Cabinet 3 times over that period. So very, very detailed piece of work. And ultimately, what we have is an incredibly impressive vision for the Beckton Parks, the former Newham City Farm site, the King George V Park site. Obviously, first point in terms of the funding. So to deliver that vision at current costs, we would be looking at something like £70 million to deliver that. What we have done to date over this past 12 months is we've delivered some early phase improvements, so a number of interventions. Those funds have either been from using existing Section 106 contributions or from securing grant funding. And we have had a really good track record of securing grant funding, particularly from the GLA, into improvements in Beckton Parks. And they actually also contributed a chunk of money that led to the development of the master plan. So they've been a really good partner. In terms of the scale, as I say, 70 million, obviously that ultimately at the moment is unfunded. We've probably delivered about somewhere in the region of £800 to £1 million worth of improvements so far. Notable works this year has been the creation of the Beckton Meadow. That's a fabulous landscape, incredible biodiverse features, a really new sort of impressive park entrance where we literally had just sort of a muddy footpath that people were taking across to the DLR. So that was sort of first improvements there. And obviously what we've delivered there is improvements in line with the master plan principles. So where we've got sort of very detailed design codes within the master plan, we've then been able to apply those, which is great. So we've already got some sort of identity emerging. We now have a specific Beckton Park litter bin, for example, a green litter bin. That's unique. We have our own sort of entrance and theming in terms of sort of a style there, which is great. And also our own sort of artwork as well to use on signs, notice boards, etc. So that's been great. Moving on from there, most recently, we've undertaken some works at the lake. So the lake at Beckton District Park North is a really sort of key area of habitat. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to undertake a number of works. We had a very, very small period of time to sort of undertake some of those works over the sort of the autumn period. And we've done that. So we closed the park for 5 days in October. We reopened it just ahead of the half term. And in that time, we've undertaken a whole load of management works, so tree management works. We've created a new area for wildflower creation. So next spring, summer, we'll be seeing some wildflower meadows. We've got new seats that have gone in, new litter bins. We've made some improvements to the children's play area. So it's sort of a widespread programme of improvements, footpath improvements as well. In terms of sort of next phases, now at the moment what we sort of haven't got is, we've obviously got our requests for sort of our own capital funding, but in the difficult financial climate that we're all facing, obviously that's not possible to fund those at this time. The master plan has sort of served us in really good stead for accessing external funding, and that's very much where we do have our eyes on the ground, where we can look at opportunities for external funding. Some of our current work is working with a number of national governing bodies to actually look at some opportunities to bring to life some of the aspirations around sort of sport. So that's sort of a key area of work. We also have the works that are about to commence in Wilthorne Pavilion. So that's some levelling up fund works that will see ultimately part of the Wilthorne Pavilion reopen. The community halls will be reopening. We will have a new cafe space and we have an operator appointed. So that's really exciting for next year.
Okay. Stephanie, did you want to supplementary on your question?
I was wanting some clarity on if we were to halt the programme where it is. I understand it started in 2021. Is that possible? We wouldn't want to be halting it, but obviously what we're doing at the moment in terms of the works that we're delivering, those works are being sort of delivered to budget. So obviously if we're starting something, then we're going to be seeing those works through. So we're not sort of going and kind of, laying out half a footpath but not finishing it because we run out of money. So that sort of approach would be very scalable. So what we deliver, we can complete, and we've got that confidence.
Out of the 70 million, what have you committed to already? Out of the 70 million cost of the master plan, how much have you actually pressed the button and gone? How much have you committed?
In terms of probably that initial spend, that's around that kind of 800 to 1 million, okay, where we've been obviously delivering sort of very early first phase works.
So on a very simplistic way, we've still got to find 69 million pounds.
Yeah. I guess if we were to deliver the master plan as it stands, and what I will say is, the master plan is a vision. It's a beautiful document, but actually, in terms of scalability, we may sort of not be able to get all that way. And obviously, we've given an indicative time frame for what could, if funding was no objective, then obviously we've set out within the master plan what a delivery plan could look like.
Councillor, but at the moment, 70 million is the complete envelope of the whole master plan, of which up to £1 million has been committed for. So 69, we've got to find 69. Okay. All right, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to clarify, because I know there's a pressing agenda around where we're going to find £69 million from. This is a vision. The Beckton Parks master plan is a vision. And as Louise mentioned, around 800,000 to £1 million has been delivered, but the rest has not been committed.
Okay.
And that's intentional.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify.
Great follow-up.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up on that then.
So how much have we spent just on the master plan itself?
Developing
Consultations.
the
everything.
master plan. I couldn't give you that figure off the top of my head. We can provide it because obviously we've got
Brilliant.
all of the
Colleen,
that
did you want to stop?
I just want to bring us back to my question, which was, what is the contingency? So if this didn't happen, I appreciate what Councillor Mirage has just said, which is this is a vision. It's a very expensive vision, but if it's a vision, if that's the case, then what's the contingency? The hours, the time spent, the engagement, the consultation. What is the vision? We know, we've been in this space before where there were lots of conversations around what was once and what was going to be. There were promises that were made. I sat in those rooms also. So I just want to know what the contingency is.
Anyone for that one?
Well, I guess, in some ways, then without that additional funding of 69 million, then we would only be able to do things as piecemeal. But I do think that we do have the ability to attract external funding, but we're never going to spend more money than we've actually can raise. So it's not, it's not as if we're going to be saying, right, we've done this, so you've got to pay for it. We will only do what we can raise money for.
And as Councillor Mirage, the vision is 70 million, but as we spent $1 million.
Absolutely.
And I get that.
Could I just say that the master plan, yes, it's a vision, but it's a prerequisite in order to trigger external funding. Without the master plan, we wouldn't get any funding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as new funding comes available, we can work the master plan up as we get more money. But it would be naive for us to say, 5 years will all be there. No, it won't. So we will have to adopt how we develop the master plan depending on that funding.
Great. Simon, do you want to?
Yes, just thank you, Chair. Just a small supplementary. Yeah, great idea, master plan, Beckton Park. We've got lots of other parks in the borough. As I said already, we've already got the 10% funding cuts coming within the parks. How's that going to impact on the other parks that we look after?
I'm conscious we haven't actually answered your question about 10% and what that actually did. So Louise can explain.
It's always the same question, really.
Yeah, so the 10%, so that is a 10% saving on the park's operations budget. So that is basically a number of savings. One of them is related to basically a post to a development role that we have at East Ham Nature Reserve, a part-time role there. So that role would be being deleted as part of the saving. Second part to that is some funding that we have around green flag growth, and that would also be deleted. So that's what we're sort of seeing at the moment, and that was the obviously considered at Cabinet in October. In terms of our other the wider parks, I guess, and all of those sort of points on that, obviously what we want to do is we're ultimately we're committed to providing the very best quality parks that we can. We've spoken about the importance of the quality of our parks. Obviously within the report you'll have seen quite a lot of information about our green and water infrastructure strategy. That's a really key bit of work that has looked at our parks provision in the borough. It's identified a number of challenges for us, fundamentally in terms of actually the provision. So actually we haven't got the provision that we would like to have. It does also identify issues around the quality, the investment, and obviously what we sort of haven't had is we haven't had sustained parks investment for sort of quite a long period of time. So obviously what we have been working on is where we've been able to bring sort of projects forwards. That's largely been, where we've got some Section 106 contributions in hand. We have had and continue to have a good track record of working with the Heritage Lottery Fund. So sort of major refurbishment works have obviously been undertaken in a number of our parks. We have a current project for Forest Lane Park working with the Heritage Lottery Fund. So, you know, the quality borough-wide is really important. But I think going back to the Beckton point, what we've acknowledged with Beckton is that, you know, that is our largest park that's within Newham's management. It's a district park, so in terms of the sort of formal classifications, it is classed as a district park. It isn't sort of a local park, and that's really significant. It's really scalable. So that's ultimately sort of with the position that we had in terms of Section 106 funding to enable us to look at moving forwards and how to spend that funding. We needed to develop a master plan to inform that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And this may come up in your Section 5 of the play, but picking up on with Simon, so part of the vision, and although not part of Beckton master plan, is that if we look at Canning Town Rec, which is on the edge of the A13, it's not that far to walk through to Beckton Park. And so work is being done in there around reciting the tennis courts, but that's been funded through Tennis England. And then in King George V Park, there's a building, and in front of that building there's just a slab of tarmac, all right? And that is going to be developed through another organisation into looking at whether that's a skate park or BMX or whatever. So there will be work continuing all the time. But that will be through odd bits of funding and working with people, other organisations.
I'm just going to bring Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, just really quickly and to Councillor Rush's point as well. I think the Beckton Parks Master Plan has really opened the vision up in terms of promoting and putting forward that ecology and biodiversity as well. And we've seen it in, not sure if members are aware, but we've actually rejuvenated a part of one of the densest parts of the borough in Green Street East, as a small part of it as an allotment. And as you know, the vision is to actually make that more biodiverse, and have that and retain that as a green space as well. So you know,
the next section is biodiversity.
The inspiration has been from the Beckton Meadows and the Beckton Parks Master Plan. So just wanted to.
I'm going to put in the biodiversity section.
So I've got two linked questions here. One, do we plan on stopping using pesticides in the borough and weed killer, which is destroying our soil quality and also destroying our pollinators? Again, on pollinators, are we monitoring the air quality from constructions, Silvertown Tunnel, the airport, for the particulate emissions that are also killing pollinators? And lastly, because this is also about water, what are we doing to clean up from the sewage spills?
Okay, I think I'm going to add one more question, Carly, then I'm going to bring you on.
Thank you. So I have a question just in regards to the biodiversity piece. So what strategies are in place to improve the biodiversity that we read about in this document, Priority 3, Section 8, in the area and throughout the borough with limited ecological resources? And how will we align this with the every square metre count principle that you refer to in the document? And the other question I have is, how does the Park Service plan to scale urban cooling measures?
Is that one question or two?
Two, such as increasing the tree canopy cover, particularly in areas most affected by urban warming.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about planting trees. So it seems to be like one of the main solutions to a lot of problems. So for example, on page 33, we talk about improving air quality, and it seems like planting trees is one of the main ways that you plan to do this. And it also seems to be like the way you plan to improve ecology and diversity as well. And it's also in the proposal. So for example, on page 280, it sort of comes up a lot, planting trees, planting trees, planting trees. So I want to know, what is the actual plan for rolling this out? How is it going to happen? and how is it going to be evenly distributed across the borough? But on the flip side of that, we do get a lot of complaints from residents about too many trees that they want it to be cut down. So we need the trees, we need them to be planted for all the benefits you talk about in this report. But how do we balance that with students, residents' concerns about trees? I've got a second question, but
yeah, we're going to lose. There's so many questions. We won't answer them. Can I go straight to the question about pesticides, herbicides? We definitely are going to stop using things like glyphosate because not just the environmental damage there is pretty sure there, it's the well-being of the users as well as in question. But in fact, we've already reduced virtually to zero the glyphosate because we're using organic foam. What we will be doing is not just facts, what we'll be doing, we'll probably pick that up in the next paper, in the streets, we are phasing out glyphosate totally. We'll be using ecologically sound means basically a hoe to get rid of the
sound. I don't really understand ecologically sound when it comes to chemicals.
Elbow grease.
No, a hoe, using a hoe.
I'm using a hoe.
Elbow grease.
I'm pretty sure that's ecologically sound. So we will be doing that. That's one of the key things we would like to do, and we will be piloting the use of holes with our operatives so we can completely stop the use of pesticides and herbicides. I have to say the biodiversity which we did in master plan, the Deputy Mayor of London came to visit and he was extremely happy to see what Newham were doing in terms of biodiversity improvements. In terms of trees, it's capital revenue costs, but it is a priority for us in terms of urban cooling, in order to get trees not just in parks, but also in some of the streets which do not have sufficient tree cover. Yeah. And that would be one of the main key things in order to get green resilience in the future. Yes, we do get a lot of complaints, an incredible amount of complaints after working in 4 boroughs. I've never seen anything like Newham in terms of people who just don't like trees. That may be more to do with us re-looking at how we manage trees. Rather than the trees themselves. So we've taken on board some of the comments we've heard, both here, but by residents in the neighbourhood forums, and we'll take that away because that is a recurring theme.
Trees have leaves, they do fall on the ground.
I think, just to say, Ali, I agree with you. Yeah. I think it is about the tree, the management of the tree, not the tree itself.
Not all residents think like that, though, Chair.
I do have a second question.
Yeah. On the tree, finish mine. Okay. On the tree, do it on the trees, because that's on the theme. Then Danny, then I'll come back to you.
Oh, I'm done with my trees question.
Okay, Danny,
it was the air quality. I think that would probably be it is being dealt with, and air quality assessments are being carried out by the Jacob Maitland would be the best person to ask about that. We're linking in quite a lot with him, but both in traffic schemes, there's air quality assessments and the wider initiatives. So I think if that's okay, we could get Jacob's team to respond to that question.
I think you've got that coming up from looking at your forward program.
Yeah, we have.
I think you have got air quality strategy consultation.
And sewage. And sewage.
Yes.
Sewage overflows. There was more than 2 hours this morning flowing into our rivers.
Thames Water.
Okay. Carleen, then also any more answers?
And how we're going to clean up the rivers by doing so. Because this plan is about bringing down water.
Yes, yeah.
And how we're going to actually clean up this water to create biodiversity in itself.
Yeah. It's a question how we work with Thames Water.
We do a lot of work with Thames Water and lobbying. Unfortunately, when sewage is released in the river, they don't warn us beforehand.
Gotcha.
They just release it. Basically, a bit like today, if there's a lot of surface water flooding, the sewage treatment works can't deal with that, they're too old, and then they offload the sewage. So it happens incredibly regularly. We lobby Thames Water to stop doing that as the central government is doing.
So they're not going to clean it up. So what are we doing to clean up the crap?
Well, it's their responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Carleen, just on one of your questions, just to follow up, because you did answer 2.
I just wanted to, I heard you talk about the tree cover, so I'll accept that as an answer. But just in regards to the strategies around the biodiversity and our limited ecological resources, and how did that align with the every square metre principle that you referred to in the document? And Chair, if you don't mind, a question to the political leadership, and it's maybe me lobbying in this space. Tree planting, we spoke about that, and I understand that. But there is an importance around tree planting along the A13 and the A406. Is that something we're going to think about going forward?
Let's just deal with the question you first asked.
Biodiversity, I can pick that up. Obviously biodiversity, incredibly important. Again, referring back to the green and water infrastructure strategy, so a lot of content in there around actually the importance of our habitat. We've reviewed our sites of importance for nature conservation. We actually saw an increase, which was great, and that was as a result of some interventions where we actually made some changes to our management of our grassland habitat. And I think one of the things that we've particularly learned over the past few years, and actually that our workforce, that those operatives that are maintaining our parks, that they've actually spent quite a lot of time learning about different management approaches. They used to generally sort of cut everything close mown within our parks. Actually now they actually really have embraced relaxed mowing in some areas. So they're actually really aware of the importance that grassland can provide as habitat. Brings its own challenges in terms of hot weather and fire risks and things. So again, they've also had a lot of learning with London Fire Brigade, actually talking about how to cut fire breaks and things. So that's a really good story. And that's something that actually, even on quite limited budgets, we can achieve. So we've achieved some great improvements there. One of the key next steps is that we need to look at developing a nature recovery plan. So this is sort of very much in conjunction with the work that's coming out of the green and water infrastructure strategy, the direction of travel, the importance that the GLA are setting on our approaches to green infrastructure. So that's something that we want to look at. At the moment, again, we're looking at funding to bring that forwards, looking at sort of opportunities there. I think I touched on in the report that we have a bid that's gone into the Heritage Lottery Fund. That's for a new fund called Nature, Towns and Cities Funding. So that's to help support, grow and improve urban green spaces.
Could I just say this is only one element. You've got the just transition plan, but you've also got the local plan, which you've got biodiverse policies within in terms of new development. And in terms of the other works which we do in terms of highways, greenway, footprint, that's to do foraging, pollinator foraging units in order to combine biodiverse pollinators habitat together so that it creates a network across the borough. Still a lot of work to be done, but the hooks are there in all the plans.
Just ask a question. On the greenway, who's responsible for cutting back the vegetation when it how does that work?
If it's the grass or now the wildflower meadow, then that's us.
The sides.
That's predominantly Thames Water. We don't maintain any of the trees along the greenway or the sort of the shrubbed areas. So the grass is ours, but that's the extent of it pretty much.
It might be helpful to put signs up to let people know, because they don't know.
I wanted to ask about this new law that came in this year about biodiversity net gain, and that if developers come build in Newham, if they use up any of our biodiversity, they have to replace it by an extra 10% on top of that. And in your report, it talks about 10% might actually have a big effect for us, so it needs to be 20%. So my question is this actually enforced? Is it happening? Are we asking for that 20%?
Yeah.
Are they? I know that if developers can't replace this in Newham, they can pay to offset it somewhere else. Are they choosing that option instead? Are we actually benefiting from this change in our
As a planner, I'd like to answer that, but I don't have planning under me in the EST, and this is a planning related question. So I think it would be better directed towards the planning department in terms of the gain and what and how
could we write to them, Aaron?
Yeah,
we'll write to them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair, I didn't want to lose sight of the questioning by your committee, and there was specific questions around the A406 and the A13 and tree planting. So members might know earlier this year there was around over 10,000 trees planted in Goosley Park. which is, if members are not aware and colleagues are not aware, it's by the junction of A13 and Prince Regent Lane, behind the Newham.
406.
Yeah.
406.
A13.
Yeah, because that's Newham a bit.
Yeah. I'm talking about the A13, not the A406, but the question was around A406 and A13. I'm referring to the A13 in this particular instance. So there was over 10,000 trees planted earlier this year. Don't quote me on the actual month. And that was as a result of the GLA funding that we actually got. So we are reliant on GLA and external funding because we don't have, allocated budget to actually plant trees in abundance. But that's a really good example where we've actually done really well.
We did the same on Beckton District Park.
Yeah.
As well.
Got a question on this topic?
Yes.
Go on then. Yeah.
I wanted to
quick
ask
question, please.
very quickly about the docks, about we're so lucky to have the docks. I live in Custom House, I can walk to it, it's lovely. However, when I'm anywhere else in the borough, it's not very accessible for me or for anyone. How do we make it more accessible? How do we make it so that we can actually help people to improve their lifestyles, more running along there, walking, cleaner?
The docks. Sorry, I'm
Is it part of the Beckton master plan strategy?
Well, there's a capital ring actually goes through the Beckton parks, and I walk it. So that is one of the main links you get from people in the south, in the north and the middle of the borough to go down to the docks. So it actually, the master plan facilitates the linkages, the pedestrian linkages for people in the north of the borough to go down to the docks.
Okay. I'm going to go on to health and impact. That's you, Fiona. Do you want to lead off?
So health, if you look at page 146, it talks about health life expectancy, and specifically if you look at page 4.2, it shows how male life expectancy is considerably lower than females, and even though this is the case in London and England, the gap is not so large in London and England, it's so large in Newham. So my question is, what are we going to do about it? And is the answer, is it all about, green spaces? What additionally are we going to do to really try and close this gap?
But I'm struggling to answer that question because it's a public health question.
Yeah, it's not an environment and sustainable. I mean, I would suggest that question gets asked.
What I will say in that,
under public health.
When it's in the report. Well, the reason why the question is asked is because the report is being pitched as the master plan will have all these additional benefits, right? So the question on the back of that, what is the actual linkage between?
Well, it promotes active life. It promotes a green infrastructure for people to enjoy, and that it helps the well-being of men and women and children.
I think, in the report, there's a lot of references to the 50 steps and how we're going to make everyone healthier, but it's just references. It doesn't show actual
Because it's not ours.
Okay.
It belongs to adult health and social care.
Okay. Can I before I bring council? Okay. One of the things I will say is, perhaps for the team to take away, is how are you going to measure the impact of this master plan going forward? You can't claim it's going to be a magic spoon to improve our public health, but not have anything in here to measure the impact of the park on that. I know it's public health, but this is a one council, I've been told, so I would expect us to have some sort of oversight on public health, as we would ask them, and they should be able to reference the master plan in your thing. Just a comment from the chair. Councillor Patel.
Thank you. I think your points are really valid, Chair, but just let me add a bit of spin and a bit of a...
As long as it's contextual, you can spin all you like.
Well, spin in the context and relevant, which is Beckton master plan is actually a vision. So what you're asking is actually probably not relevant right now. It might be in 10 years' time, but how we expect lives and health to actually to be improved,
right,
is measure that should be measured and will be measured at some point in the future rather than right now.
What?
Let me finish.
No, hold on.
Let me finish.
No, hold on.
I'm in your hands,
No.
which is a dangerous place.
It is a very dangerous place. I'm going to bring in my two colleagues on my left, but I will say, if we've got a vision, which is going to cost us £70 million, and we refer to here, one of the most deprived boroughs is going to help us achieve that. With a vision, you have a clearer set of objectives. And I would have expected some sort of hard metric at the end of spending 70 million. I accept the point you make.
Can I just ask, Terry, is these 5 bits that we've got here, is that just directed at the Vector Master Plan, or is that about parts?
Whole thing.
All right.
Yeah, because we did ask about parts.
No, I understand that.
But obviously what we wanted to give recognition for, there's a lot of hard work on the master plan, and Louise has demonstrated that today with the level of detail. And I think it'd be unwise for us to ask about a park strategy without specifically saying, please tell us about the master plan.
That's fair, and I think in that case, the benefits to health, and going back to Thelma's question, is actually that our parks are an absolutely integral part of improving the health of our residents. And you talked about the front of the stops. Unfortunately, that's not ours to manage. But I would really like that opened up, because actually during the summer, the amount of people that walk along here is incredible. But where are they going? And what can we do to encourage other people to actually have things that they can do?
I think we are all, using one of your words, aligned as to the fantasticness of this plan. And perhaps where we, bringing back Miraj's point, we accept it's a vision, I think, which is saying, okay, how does it knit together? Even though we only spent £1 million, they're 70. So we're just
Chair, I'm conscious we're going to jump into maybe a different subject or a topic, and I'm conscious that our colleagues from Elwa, from the East London Waste Council,
we got them.
They're in the next
one. So if there's questioning solely around that,
that's all right.
Just conscious of, obviously.
Thank you for your concern, but the meeting has been well chaired. We know where we're going.
Can I so just going back to some of the remarks you just made, Councillor Miraj, in regards to the Vector Master Plan. However, the question posed by Councillor Thelma was referring to your Newham's Greens Water Infrastructure Strategy. I have a question on that, which is, how does the council plan to address the challenges of uneven distribution that you refer to in the document and poor connectivity of green spaces identified in this part of the document? So I appreciate the comments that Councillor Miraj has said, but that makes no reference to the actual question that was being asked regarding the document in which you provided to committee this evening.
I think, there is an unequal, but I also think that we have parks that nobody knows about. So Lyle Park is a perfect example that is absolutely amazing, but I bet you that...
Where's that? Where is it?
I'm not telling you.
You should know, Terry.
All right, I won't tell you because you might spoil it. We've got Lyle Park, we've got that other big part that they got really fed up with other people using because they thought it was their own private barrier park. And then you move on, and Victoria Gardens. We are blessed south of the A13. We're not blessed with much, but actually we're blessed with parks. And then, the people get confused, I think, with West Ham Park. They think, well, why can't everybody be like West Ham Park? That's not ours. But, the work that has gone into Central Park, for example, in the last 2 or 3 years has transformed it. And, we'll get on in a minute to play. And that, for me, and Carleen will know, we've been banging on about play for the last 5 years. And eventually somebody's going to listen, but, the infrastructure around our parks, and we do not, a lot of residents don't make the most of them because they don't actually realise how lovely they are.
No, you're right, it's a really great car. I'm going to bring in Stephanie, and then Simon, you're going to come in and play in equipment. That's what we think.
Yeah, I appreciate we've put a lot of investment into our existing parks as well as the vision for the master plan. But there are a lot of people who do not go to our parks, and a lot of it's due to safety and ASB. How have you been working with community safety teams to make sure that this £70 million investment is going to be a space that people will actually want to go to?
With community safety team have been involved from the start of this one, the development of the workshop, so we can design out areas which look safe. There's probably a lot more work we want to do with women's safety to identify those areas where people do feel unsafe, and then look at what measures we can do to improve the perception of safety. So for especially young women, I think a lot of the People Power Places was based on really superb schemes on encouraging women to use the parks, especially from certain more hard to reach sections of the community. So we all went into that. We all worked together in order to develop this to be as safe as possible and meet the needs of those who feel a bit threatened walking through the parks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring on Simon. Play equipment, accessibility, and just lead those.
I wasn't talking about play equipment as such. I'll take this Be My Bonnet thing with e-scooters.
Oh.
Right.
Not surprised to say.
Where's his question go?
We're just
the question is, sorry.
Yeah, the question is,
obviously they're only for use on private land. We do see them in our parks and things. They can be a menace. Old people, disabled people, parents with young children, with prams and things, want to use the park. And if those things are scooting around, it's an added danger. Is there anything we can actually do?
We work closely with the police. It is a police issue. We haven't got the enforcement powers to regulate it, but we work closely with the police to target those areas. We have joint tasking in Central Park, and so the areas where we know it's not just that, there's knife crime there as well. But when we do joint tasking, they target e-scooters as well. But again, they're everywhere.
And line bikes.
And line bikes and electric bikes who have been modified to go well over the speed limit. It's a growing problem in London. We know that, but it's becoming a priority with the police as well.
Thank you. And the question with regards to equipment is quite a direct one. Regards to toilets in plants.
Toilets?
Yes.
What's the strategy on toilets and parks?
Thank you so much.
So,
you know this one.
yeah, well, I probably do. So, I think, so we have an arrangement with the cafe in Central Park. We have an arrangement with Apple Carts in Plashet Park. There are toilet facilities in Royal Victoria. There are not enough public toilets. Never mind just parks. There are not sufficient public toilets. And sometimes where they are, actually they get vandalised so quickly that it's just like whack-a-mole, really. But I think did we not have a motion?
Yeah.
And I think that we need to be looking seriously how we take that forward.
Okay, thank you.
Community toilets are really important.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Carly, one question.
I had a question from part on page 31 around the play and urban sports. So we all, if you don't mind, Chair, just indulge me.
One question.
Yeah, one question. We all know the importance of outdoor facilities for families that live in temporary accommodation, high-rise buildings, and so on and so forth. I just want to know how are the projects that you talk about in this section of the document being tailored to address specific needs around children and those children that also have special educational needs and disabilities? I know that you're going to bring me back to the Beckton Master Plan.
Answer the question.
we have recently done a really excellent Little Ilford Park, which has been, and Warrior Square, that has been really well received. when we can get money, we are doing work on play equipment in parks, and wherever possible, we are making it fully accessible. So I know that we just recently had to take a piece of play equipment down, and it will be replaced with something far more accessible. And certainly, Carly, you and I both know that with the Vector Master Plan, that was our big issue, was around making everything in that park fully accessible.
Yeah.
And the urban sports, we're working, certainly, I mean, Neil and I are working with Carly Clark around urban sports, hence why we will have that skate park thing,
Okay.
and then Goosey Park, etc. So that we're getting there, but it's never ever going to be as quick as we want.
Salma, supplementary then, councillor Mirage.
I wanted to ask about play equipment, because on page 37, it says that play equipment is monitored on a weekly basis, and that small repairs and large repairs are carried out. However, I wonder if this is really the lived experience of residents, because we had Project Play Newham come to our full council meeting once, and they spoke about their experience. It doesn't seem to be that they think that it's monitored on a weekly basis.
Question.
And if you look at page 165, my question is, what are we doing to improve the conditions? Because I'm a custom house councillor, and specifically custom house, it says that it's found to be very poor, and most other boroughs, like most other wards in Newham, none of them are ranked like excellent.
Okay.
So what are we doing about our play areas?
We've been putting a very, very, very strong case to get additional funding in order to repair play equipment. We did not have that funding previously. £1 million of funding has now been included in Louise's area in order to repair and improve play equipment. As we were finding out, we were taking play equipment out where there was a health and safety issue because we didn't have the money to replace them. Yeah. We do have that money. Yes, we would like more, but it's a good start in terms of repairing that play equipment. Louise, do you want?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Absolutely. I mean, it's a starting point, and that's actually enabling us to address some of those most immediate concerns. One of the schemes that I've made reference to, Priory Park, we had a really, really huge multiplayer unit. It was wonderfully inclusive. The neighbouring school, primary school, has sort of a specific sort of send unit attached to it. And, so obviously the last thing we wanted to do was to see, a really great piece of equipment that's over 30 years old have to be removed. We're sort of doing a partial removal, but we're actually working at the moment to consult, to engage, to develop a new item to go in there next year. So that's through that capital funding that Ali just touched upon. I think just quickly on Poor Play Newham, obviously we're working with Poor Play Newham. Play kind of sits jointly across sort of public health and public realms, ENST in terms of lead.
Are they called Poor Play?
Poor Play Newham.
No, Project Play Newham.
Project Play Newham, sorry, they were Poor Play Newham. They were
3 months ago.
It's not called Poor Play.
They were called that.
A bit pejorative, isn't it? Poor Play?
What?
It's a bit.
Well, that's what they call themselves. We can't tell them to change their name.
No.
But I think just if I'm just following one quick point on that is that we're actually developing sort of a play strategy for the borough. And that's something that there's been some initial engagement and there will be much further engagement as well. That particular group, as I say, they've been engaged. We've had co-create surveys. And that's something that we want to get those sort of those needs and desires
captured.
captured.
We have a meeting on that in 2 weeks' time.
All right, very quickly. Do you want to try and move
Just
on?
on that point, on page 31,
Yeah.
as it's been mentioned, I think it details actually the schemes that will be delivered, particularly in Glasgow Park and also King George V Park as well. Just going on to page 165 as it's been quoted as well. I do accept that there is a lack of send play and accessible play, and we are very, very unfortunate that we don't have more parks or facilities or actually play facilities that are actually send friendly, unfortunately, and it's on our list.
Okay, thank you. I've got one question on metrics and performance, and I want to move on to football pitches. Then I want to move on to the next item, the major item in Brennan about the PFI deal.
Thank you. So on page 36, section 7 talk about performance management. What are the key performance indicators used to monitor the effectiveness of the green space maintenance, and how are these tied to the broader council building and fair and known priorities?
I think quickly on to the priorities. So obviously some of our initial priorities are obviously risk-based. We've just had that conversation about play.
Yeah.
Obviously a lot of risks associated to play equipment. We're very aware of the age of a lot of our play equipment. So that's a massive risk that we're managing. Another really significant risk that we're managing is around trees. So similar to play, we've got very comprehensive regimes in place. Obviously works recommendations arising from inspections, all of that's captured. So we're capturing all that digitally. We're reporting on that monthly. We sat down as a public realm management team today. We went through all of our departmental dashboards. We looked at our dashboards around our parks performance, our play equipment inspections, our trees, our grounds maintenance performance.
Do you publish those?
We don't. No,
Why not?
we don't. There isn't a particular reason. No reason why they couldn't be published.
The issue is people
Don't know.
don't know, so when they think they want to know, they get anxious and it becomes an issue. I think we just put the information out there, because I think more than often, from my perspective, often we've got the information, we should tell the public, and therefore there's nothing to hide. I don't make your life a lot easier. Well, question, hold on.
On maintenance of grounds, specifically in Beckton Park, I've been told that when we cut a football pitch, that the coach ends up, even though they've had to pay
Question about policy.
to use that pitch, they have to rake it themselves to make sure it's safe. Obviously, this cost.
Okay, I think that's a comment. Fleming?
I'm just going to go back to what Terence said. Do you tell people what is happening? The community, they have groups in most of these parks that deliberate on issue that's happening around park. I don't think they know what all the good things you are doing. I mean, is it possible to have officers liaison with them, to talk with them, to let them know? We have group, we have meetings, not only in Central Park, we have in various
What's the communication
and
strategy?
they
How
don't
do you
know.
communicate to the public?
I think
You're talking about friends of parks,
Yeah, they are friends of parks.
so they're not in every park.
Yeah.
No.
Perhaps a wider question about what are you doing? How will you be improving your communication going forward with residents about what you do?
I think in terms of what we're doing, so obviously in terms of all of our projects, we have very clear communication plans. So I think I've touched on earlier around the use of co-create. So obviously all of our parks improvements projects are all captured on co-create. So that's very much our key portal. We've done a lot of work on obviously, Beckton Parks master plan going back 3 years. Some of our current work, I've touched on Little Ilford, our Luff improvements, extensive engagement there. Yes, we've got the co-create stuff, we've got the online surveys, but we actually spend a lot of time out actually in the spaces engaging with people, and actually also going to other venues to try and talk to non-users and some of them more hard to reach. But obviously the most immediate thing when we're looking at parks engagement is actually to go and talk to park users in the park. So that's really important. We've done a lot of work in terms of our comms messaging, thinking about our campaigns, projects like our Greenway Pollinator Trail in 2023. We've captured that. We've done wonderful work capturing that whole project from start to finish and telling that story, working with partners. We were really fortunate on that particular project that we were able to bring in 2 environmental charities, which, that provided invaluable input. I spoke about some of the learning around our grounds maintenance operatives. They're getting a lot of that actually from environmental charities that are working with us and collaborating.
Can I say thank you? I want to move on to the next item. Just to sum up this session, I think, thank you for the information in the report, and very good. And what I will say, Lindsay gave me a presentation on this about 6 months ago on the Beckton Park. I remember at the time when we had a conversation, I said, you're not explaining this to other people because it's really good. And one thing I said, and it came on to Councillor Femi's question, I think it's perhaps spend a bit more time thinking about how you can explain this, what you're doing, to people. Tell people what you're doing. I think they'll be quite impressed, and the credit's there. But a couple of issues: tree planting, play equipment, send. Does come down to capital and comes down to money. And obviously, it's about, I would say, just set out manage the expectation of people. So especially on trees, speak as a resident, we've got issues with trees. If people don't know, they start moaning.
Yeah.
As
I already know.
Carly's my local councillor. As a resident, he gets it in the neck. But I will say, please explain more, use the website more, and just point people to where they can get information and also engage with you.
I would disagree with that, using the website, because actually if you can find something on the website.
Very true.
You know.
I was being helpful. I leave it onto the great minds of the officers to find out the most appropriate. So I want to go on to the waste recycling street cleansing part. Obviously, one of the key bits, there's two real bits, is Newham per se and how we do things in borough, and also the bit about the forthcoming, I call it the PFI in my head. Probably not the correct term. ELWA, the new contract and how that's working. So I don't know, Sarah and Alid, how do you want to break it up? But I think it's important for you want to just take some time, 5 or 10 minutes, just to outline what you think are the key points.
Yeah.
And we've got some lines of questions we want to take.
Just to give an overview of where we were, and if you probably see the stats in the report. Probably about 2-3 years ago, it's safe to say Newham was one of the dirtiest boroughs in London, and you can see that in some of the stats. Sorry, I'm using a Word document here, so I don't have the page numbers.
That's all right.
But the stats were probably about 2021. It was about 20% of the borough streets were below acceptable standards in terms of litter. And this wasn't our calculation, this was Keep Britain Tidy's calculation. As we brought the outsourced service in and Tracy restructured the service, year by year, the KBT scores have got better and better and better. The benchmarking in London is about 9% of any streets in any borough should be unacceptable at any given time. We started at about 20%, it went down to 14, and then 9, and then we got it right down to 6, and then we were right down to 4%, which was one of the best in London, and we were upper quartile. Clearly, the perception out there is maybe different from residents. So there's been a consistent improvement in street cleansing over the last 3 years. We were right upper quartile. There has been, admittedly, over the last 2 months, there's been a spike up again to about 11%. But we are confident we now understand the problems and we get it down to street cleansing, to get it down to upper quartile in London again. If you've been to the neighbourhood forums, you know that some of the perception of the residents doesn't match what KBT scores are saying, and that's a problem, and we understand that one. In terms of fly tipping, that was and that continues to be a considerable problem for the borough. But about 16 months ago, I think some of you might have been there, moonshot. I hate that word, but it was a way of how we start looking at making cleaner, the borough cleaner. We were doing okay in terms of street cleansing. Because of the restructuring of the service, there was just a huge improvement to where we were. But fly tips were still a big issue. One of the key issues were we have a lot of community safety officers, but they did not concentrate on enforcing fly tips because they had quite important roles in terms of joint working with the police and ASB, looking at vogue issues. So not surprisingly, that was a priority for them. So it was felt that they were only issuing maybe 2 or 3 fixed penalty notices a week on fly tips. The problem was a lot more than that. So therefore, a proposal was put forward to set up a new dedicated fly tipping enforcement team called an environcrime team, made up of about 9 to 10 officers. It was no additional revenue, council revenue. It was part funded by PRS, which is private sector housing licensing, and HRA. The reason for that was because Cape Britain Tidy has confirmed that in all their studies, the main culprits for fly tipping are usually private sector housing, rather than those who've lived there for a long term. That environcrime team has been operational for about 8-9 months now, issuing hundreds and hundreds of fixed penalty notices. which didn't happen before. So those people who are prolific fly tippers and just every day throw something out because it couldn't be bothered to wait for the waste collections, a lot of those have already been whacked by a fixed penalty notice. 79% of those fixed penalty notices are paid, and we've had 100% record in courts for anyone who's appealed it. So that has been very, very effective in putting the stick effect against fly tipping. And what we are hoping that will reflect in a lowering the tonnage of fly tipping over time, as the prolific fly tippers have been whacked with FPNs. The other key thing we identified 16 months ago was a lot of fly tips were you put a cleaner up, you put a report in and said, yes, fly tip reported the fly tip, and then you get a report, it's been done, it's been cleared, when it hadn't been. One of the reasons for that was when the operatives went that is that, well, it's not on the public ground, it's on the private property, so we're not touching it. We said that as far as residents are concerned, I don't think they give a damn if it's on the private or public land. So we set up a new, hired some cage vehicles and got agency staff to call it tidy team. So there was 8 cage vehicles now we've got, which have been going operational for nearly a year now.
Yeah.
And they go drive around the borough collecting fly tips, whether it's on private or public land. What we have seen is a number of the reports have not gone down by 50%, by 11%, is because the vast majority of those fly tips, residents don't need to report them because they're gone before they realise. So the fly tips have been very, very effective in dealing with the fly tips across the area. But the tonnages, and Tracy sent me some information today, is still high. It's still really, really high. If anything, it's gone higher. The reason we think that is the case because the tidy teams are now picking more of the fly tips in the private land, so that's increased the tonnage. But in terms of how we compare with other London boroughs, we're doing very well. The Keep Britain Tidy have mentioned that, and our approach to just tidying and enforcement has been enforced. But it is, because the nature, the transient nature of the borough is always going to be a problem. But we've put a lot more resources in there now in order to deal with that one. I think that's, unless some officers or members would like to add.
That's a really good overview. So I want to move on, just the introduction on the ELWA contract, or how you want to discuss it, introduce it.
Means proposed contract.
Proposed contract, and also looking forward in terms of, you know, the financing, the metrics, success factors. I have read this. I just wanted to get a sense from you, what will the contract look like in the future, and how will it be different from our current contract? You allude to it in the notes, but there's got to be some agility in the contract to take into consideration future legislative changes. I get that, but what else is that?
Chair, do you mind if I introduce?
Of course you can.
So just very briefly, I'm the chair of the East London Waste Authority. And thanks, David, for joining, because David's working very hard on the actual procurement of the new contract. David's sitting at the end over there, waving his hand now. And essentially, we'll be moving it into a new procedure, new contract post 2027. Essentially, at the moment, we are, in short, I don't want to go into too much length about this, but the PFI contract is not very beneficial. It's a 25-year-old, 23-year-old contract entered into in 2002. The main purposes of that was to move away from landfill. So it's fit for purpose at the time, but gives us very little beneficial value for actually recycling, reusing, etc. And hopefully moving to 2027 and onwards, that will change drastically, along with a raft of different legislations that are forthcoming in terms of food waste, in terms of other elements which David will go into. So, so over to you. If that's all right for you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Well, I suppose you've probably introduced it and summarised already quite succinctly. The the current PFI contract runs until 2027, and it doesn't incentivize you as collection authorities or us as disposal authorities to divert more waste for recycling or otherwise. The only incentive that you've got is to reduce waste, because the less waste you deliver to us, the less payment there is. But we pay the same rate for any kind of waste that you deliver to us, whether it's landfill waste or dry recycling or garden waste. So one of the key aspirations going forward, I want to put the time frame really clearly, is 2028, 2029. So it's not tomorrow, it's not next year. We'll be introducing a different levy mechanism, which will mean that you will pay different rates depending on the type of waste that you deliver. So for obvious reasons, if you deliver to us more recycling, more food waste, obviously going forward, more dry recycling, you will pay less than delivering to us residual waste, because that residual waste for the treatment itself that undergoes is much more expensive anyway, through to incineration and so on.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Of course you can.
So on the 5 streams of waste, which is the most expensive for you to deal with?
Residual waste. It will be residual waste.
When you say landfill.
Yeah, which is not landfill as such, because we don't send pretty much any waste to landfill currently. We divert more than 99.9% of the waste away from landfill. The only waste that's landfill is asbestos. Everything else is diverted. And as Councillor Patel said, this contract is actually achieving what it was intended to achieve when it was entered into in 2002.
Okay. One more question of clarification before I open it to members taking chair's privilege. There are 5 waste streams.
Yeah.
Each of a different tariff to what is charged.
Yeah.
So will the contract incentivise Newham for, say, reducing A, each of those streams which go to you, and B, the quality of whatever goes to you?
Absolutely. Let me, however, caveat the answer by saying that those contracts, some of those contracts that will deal with dry recycling of food waste and garden waste, aren't yet in procurement. So it's something that we've got in the forward plan, but they're not yet procurements that we are just undertaking.
Just want to follow up on that before I again open it up.
Yeah.
Newham does have, it's not a unique population, just sometimes have a difficult population in certain areas. So therefore, in terms of developing those contracts on the 5 streams of waste, how will it be nuanced to reflect A, the population, and B, real incentives for Newham to sort itself out and to recycle or give you better quality waste?
Yeah.
What is that process? How is that being done?
Yeah.
How is that nuancing being done?
Well, at the moment, you have to imagine we've got one contractor. So we deliver the waste to our contractor, and the contractor and the operator have got to deal with it. So there is no incentive to you as a collection authority to deliver to us waste that is as clean as possible, of the best possible quality possible. Going forward, there will be different contracts. So the contractor who will be responsible for treating dry recycling will expect high quality dry recycling to be delivered. And so there will be consequences to you as a collection authority if you deliver very dirty waste, because that waste cannot be treated by that contractor in a way that achieves high quality and new products.
So we'll have to build a contingency fund just in case we're fined for giving poor quality waste, right?
It may not be a contingency fund, but it may be that waste ends up being landfilled as residual waste as opposed to treated as dry recycling because the contamination rate is too high.
That's a really good introduction. So committee, we had 2 really good overviews of, so I'm going to go from my left. Stephanie, any questions on this bit? I'm going to go up to Simon and come back. I can come back to you.
No, it's fine. I've got a question about the contact rates on page 304.
Yeah.
So those targeted door knocking with 30% contact rate.
What's that for, Stephanie?
Sorry. That's for
Waste improvement,
waste
recycling.
recycling. So bringing the bins to the front and.
Oh, you mean the new waste? You mean the new waste collection?
Yeah.
Bin collection.
Yeah. Sorry, should have given you a bit more.
No, it's all right. We do a lot of door knocking. Yeah.
Go on, Stephanie.
Yeah. So 30% contact rate. what are the pilot strategies to engage the other 70%?
Oh,
So the work that we've done around the resident engagement for the hard to reach communities, that was in addition to a lot of communication that we've already done under our Be Bin Day Ready communication campaign, which I hope people have seen. So that was the final step from comms. We have delivered a leaflet with information to every resident that was affected by the service changes. We put a bin hanger on every single bin, which informed residents of their new collection dates. We had information hubs in libraries, so we trained our library staff on the changes and how to inform residents if they needed, which was referred to in the communication materials that we delivered. We had livery on the side of our waste vehicles, which just tool the borough as they collect waste, so they're on hand to see. We had posters go up outside on high streets, on JC the Co-board bus stops. We had banners go up around the borough outside parks and stations. We continuously delivered comms online and through social media.
Okay. Just a question.
Yeah.
Why did we do it? We're telling people we need to put, it's a curtilage, I think the phrase is.
Curtilage
But we
collection.
never explained to residents why. It was just like an interruption. Why did we do this? If it's money, why didn't we tell the residents that? But help us to help you. Just an afterthought.
Mhm.
A lot of residents were doing their heads in, right, over this. We never explained to them why we did it. If you told them, it would have helped you to keep the bills down or whatever, help us to help you, I think you might have got a bit more compliance. Just a comment there. Simon, check. Hold on, I'll take Simon. Okay. Do you want to quickly come in, public Simon?
No.
Simon?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Recycling. I know we are improving recycling, rates of recycling, obviously, but the rates are still relatively low compared to other London boroughs. So what are our aspirations for 2 to 3 years' time? What figure do you want to get to with
I mean,
recycling?
that's necessary L word.
Yeah. Chair, can I?
It's 25% at the moment, right?
Yeah.
28.
28.
Okay.
Which is the highest Newham has ever.
Okay, what's the aspiration?
Well,
I think there was a comment in the all members briefing to ramp it up to 50%, which is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, at this particular point.
It was the Mayor of London, the DFT, said we should be aiming at 50%.
We should be. I think
No
right
one in
now
London
it's
boroughs.
unrealistic and it's not going to happen.
Okay, can I just ask a question therefore? What is the target and why? If we need to get to 50, the question is, what do we need to do to get to 50? Not saying it's unachievable. It's just saying.
it's about education, isn't
Okay.
it, Terry? Do you know what I mean? We're honest about it. Probably the people who are sat in this room probably recycle really properly, okay? Hopefully. But either side of me, where I live, I know that one side puts whatever they want in their recycling bin, and so does the other. So unless we're going to spend time examining each of those bins, which we did in a pilot, I believe, in Manor Park at some point, and saying, this is not recycling, we're not taking your bin, then actually it's about education. And often it's the children in those households that are the leaders of that.
Right, I will take Alid, Mirage,
I've got a question.
Just that 50% is an aspiration, which we will still maintain. We will be trying to aim for 50. A lot of things need to happen in terms of not just behaviour change, but infrastructures, in not just in street scene properties, but in housing estates, to bring us a bit closer to that 50%. But we're not giving up on 50%. From all in the London boroughs, it seems quite unachievable at the moment. Well, it could be for nice places like Bexley, but it's an aspiration we are aiming for. We haven't given up.
I think I'm much more comfortable with targets than aspirations, because aspiration allows wriggle room not to achieve it.
Well, that's the target we're obliged to. We're not obliged, that's the target we've been set by
I think it will be, from this committee and for residents, it'd be better if we chart a course. So if we're at 28%, we've got to go to 50. What are the things we need to do to get to the target? I think that is where I think residents and I think it will coalesce minds, organisational and residents. And as I said to Celinda, you know, we need to explain to residents why we're doing things, not just do it to them. So if we told them we recycle more in the new contract, the bills might be less or whatever, people will be incentivised personally to do things.
Do you think so?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think within the body of the report,
Yeah.
it refers to the Environment Act,
Yeah.
with a number of streams in terms of food waste collection and others, which would start taking that recycling up. So there is a number of things which we'll do, and as a result of the contract, there's a lot of other things which we'll do, but it's a moving feast, depending on capital revenue, not just from this council or the government. But it is a target of 50%, and that's the target we're aiming for.
I just think it will coalesce minds and effort and resources if we all knew what Herculean task it is, right? And then we set out the appropriate timeline to do it. I think that'd be easy, because especially if we don't get it right, as I heard it from the Elwer, we will probably be incurring financial penalties for getting the new streams wrong. And then we're being a doom loop of no one's recycling, we're being fined, and no mindset is being deployed to solve the problem. And I can just read in the notes and projecting forward, I think it might be easier on ourselves if we just set out a clear, concrete plan. I'm going to bring in Sarah, then Mirage, then Thelma, I think it was on this.
I was just going to, I was interested in actually food waste, because I think that actually food waste is almost as big an issue in Newham. And if you look at, I mean, we throw away tons and tons of food every single week. And when we had that, we did do a pilot, I think, a couple of years ago. I mean, it certainly changed my habit. And in a very simple way. I mean, the very fact you got away what you put, it was like, oh. But I've just come back from France, and what they've just changed their system, that now they can recycle for free. But any waste, like waste that we were talking about, they now have to pay for. And that has really concentrated people's minds. So recycling everything, but the moment you put one of your black bags in their special bin, you're charged per weight.
That's interesting.
I like that.
Hold on, Femi, hold on. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Mirage.
Just to come back to you on the comms around the bins and the collections, etc. I think in the grand scheme of things, in the early stages there were some hiccups and there were some challenges, but actually in the grand scheme of things, it's been a great success. So October's figures, I've just pulled them up. So it's really important to note that we actually collect over 1 million bins, residential only, by the way. Both recycling and domestic, over 1 million. And in terms of non-compliance, that's been 18,841. And I stand to be corrected on that. But you're a finance man, Chair, and that's 0.011.
Non-compliance is about people not putting their bins
out.
Where they should be.
That's not us.
Or putting stuff in their bins, overflowing.
Anyway, I'll move on to my next point around food waste legislation and collection, which is coming to force quite soon, and David can speak more about that. In terms of that, there's so many moving parts, as Sarah mentioned, in terms of food waste collection, in terms of the deposit schemes, in terms of the education around that, in terms of how much waste we actually send to Elwer. We only pay for the waste that we actually send to Elwer. So that essentially for members and members' sake, rather than officers, because they're well versed around this, what we send to Jenkins Lane. Anything that we send to Jenkins Lane, we pay for. Anything that we don't send there, we don't pay for. And essentially, what's not really accounted for is the reuse and the, I'll give you a really prime example, not blowing my own trumpet, but I don't buy plant pots. I love gardening, I love growing my own fruit and veg. I don't buy plant pots as a principle of mine, I just reuse plastic. Is that accounted for? No, it's not. And it won't be for other people that do that. So I'll leave you on that point.
I'm also gardening. One thing we could do very simply is to encourage people to compost vegetable waste in their gardens if they can.
If they've got
And I think we could do a lot more because the council has a very good cheap scheme, right, to get a big 350 litres big black thing you put in the garden, you put your compost. I've got 3 composters right now, right?
You've got more than your bedroom.
Yeah, I know. But
Chair, let me just stop you there.
26, hold on.
What we are looking at, looking at David again, is looking at a multi-borough scheme around mass composting. So looking at the various sites across Redbridge, Havering, Barking and Dagenham, and seeing where we could actually compost the compostable food waste in order to pay less when we actually
do the thing. Now I'm going to bring in Danny, Thelma, and Carly. Then. Yeah.
I'm going further down the line.
Yeah. So you've spoken a lot about this sort of bid ready campaign and how successful it was. There were some hiccups, but it was really successful. For example, on page 327, you can see that there was over 1 million digital views on your social media campaign. And we're talking about residents' behaviour. Could we use the same strategy to sort of help to change residents' behaviour? Could we use this to help with like recycling or splitting up our waste? Because we change residents' behaviour pretty quickly.
Lucy?
It was, I think the main driver for changing resident behaviour was actually not collecting their bins.
Yes.
If I'm honest. All the comms in the world didn't do enough. We delivered the comms campaign, which was expensive to deliver at that scale, and I wouldn't have the budget to do that for every campaign that we do. But we delivered it, and there wasn't much change until we stopped collecting.
Yeah.
So as successful as those clicks are, as I know people have seen it, as people have fed back to us, it's still not enough.
Yeah. So in those 3 weeks where it was a bit lenient, there was absolutely zero change in people's habit. All right, people weren't putting their bins up. The moment we stopped collecting their bins, whoa, everybody was wanting.
I'm looking for a date on the food rollout, and you have a great place. Food waste, yes, sorry. Where we're going to be trialling it. Obviously, there's going to be difficulties, especially with a large amount of high rise and how we've managed that. And I have this brilliant ward called Stratford Olympic Park, which we'd love to try out this and have the willingness to want to do it as well.
I can go into that. There are 2. The reason why we can't tell you yet, because we need DOSH to pay for the pilot, which we haven't got at the moment, but we'll be going to Cap in Hand, Go Brickley, to request a bit of money. I think it was about 300,000 in order to fund the pilot. On the basis of that pilot, then we will know the infrastructure, we would know what we would need. We've been told by government that they would be giving the capital and revenue funds in order to cover that. From what we haven't had a confirmation of that one, but being realistic, there's going to be a shortfall. Yeah. So we are lobbying government with London councils at the moment to make sure that we have enough capital revenue to fund the food waste project. But the first steps we need is to get the money in order to carry out the pilot, and that's what we're working on.
But we do have to do it due to the act.
We have to do it, yeah.
Now, this is on this bit on food waste, isn't it?
It is on this bit because we're connected, really, because in boroughs where they, so my sister lives in Walthamstow, so she's got a brown bin for one thing, she's got something else. Her front of her house
full of bins.
It's full of bins. And actually, we still have houses, certainly in Beckton, where they don't have any frontage. So, we have to be realistic about food waste collection. So, that will slow us down a little bit. But I'd like those food waste collection.
Paddies.
No. In Walthamstow, they've got little lorries like.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that would be a dream, wouldn't it?
So
Carly.
did you want to, just in case I have not misinformed you?
Just to add to that, if that's okay, Chair.
Very briefly.
We have fully scaled up a trial. We've modelled the trial. We've looked at how we can run a trial across the borough to make sure we are targeting a representative sample. At the minute, I'm sorry, it doesn't include Stratford.
Okay.
But there is one of the appendix documents if you want to have a look.
Lovely. Thank you. Very briefly.
Very briefly, I think it's good to mention at this particular juncture that on average, we dispose of, top of my head, again, David, correct me if I'm wrong, around per household, 700 kilos per year, is it? So almost food waste. Well, waste in general. But I think it's really key, and again, I'm glad Lindsay mentioned what she did. We need to be really proportionate around where we actually trial, and it's also dependent on how much funding we actually get, which is not actually being clarified by central government.
So just a question. So we've got to do the food waste thing, trial, and do it. But if we don't get the money, we've still got to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Carly.
Thank God
And you,
for that.
Thank you to the virtue card. You should learn it.
Give credit where credit is due. This is actually a really good report, and a lot of work has gone into this. So I give you all a lot of credit. However,
yeah. Question?
Yeah, they're my post-it notes, so don't worry about that. The question I have is in regards to the budget challenges. So a lot of this document refers to if funding is got, if we can succeed with this. And I guess I want to understand what the strategy highlights in regards to the financial risks, including the food waste trial that you've talked quite a lot about. What are the contingency plans? Because some of this stuff I've already heard you have to do. So how are you going to mitigate the potential impacts on residents and service delivery?
At the moment, I think given that this would be a structure required, I fully expect the funding to be put available because there is no contingency plans. We don't have reserves in our area or anything. We will require, there is no contingencies, a structural requirement. We have to deliver it. I fully expect it to happen, but it will just increase the financial burden on the council if not sufficient capital revenue comes in from the government.
Can I say? So I guess, Sarah, this is a question for you then. So if that's the case, there is no contingency, we have to do it, there is no choice here. What services are you taking it from?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, we're going through this budget challenge meetings at the moment, which have been quite brutal, to be perfectly honest. And no directorate, well, maybe, but there is no, you know, we don't have, we have cut everything that we can possibly cut. So it will have to come
from somewhere else.
And I think that it is going to be really tricky, and that if that means that, you know, we are looking at closing children's centres, we are looking at various things, and today, you know, we had adult health and social care, and even though they're saving 16.5 million, it still wants more. And you know, so somewhere it's going to have to give us that 300,000.
There are other things as well. One of the reasons why Newham's recycling is quite low is because we were tied into this PFI contract. Most of the authorities now in London have got fortnightly residual collections. By doing that, implementing that, there will be efficiencies, which could fund other things. But the problem is then has to be a realisation. If you look at the page, if we are sending 700 kilos per household of residual waste, which was one of the highest in London per resident, is this the right time to do that? There needs a lot of behaviour change first before we implement a change like that. Otherwise, we could end up with incredibly dirty streets.
I'm going to bring in Steph. You know what I mean? I'm bringing Steph. So that's why I asked the question. We said about 50%. It'd be easier to do that if we knew what it would require to get up to 50%. Right? So once you know how hard what the road is, then it will help you in your discussions in budget to know what's necessary and what's not. Because at the moment, it seems we're not quite sure where we want to go. We're being buffeted by external, where we get the money or not.
I've got a couple. One's about the food waste collection and the penalties if we give in contaminated recycling. What is the approach when it comes to tower blocks, where there are large bins and
shared waste?
Shared waste, yeah. What's the plan?
So a tower block would have a communal bin, just as they do for their residual and their recycling. Best practice says that it should go into a bin housing unit, that it should be cleaned regularly, and it would be used if we continually communicate with those residents in that block. We know that recycling from communal blocks is just much lower than it is at curbside, but that would be the plan to put that in place. The reality is the capital funding we've received does not allow us to fulfil best practice at the moment.
Yeah, because there's one issue with separating recycling and waste, but also there are very tall tower blocks and limited bins, so there's often overflowing, there's often bins not collected, and when people see that, there's lack of incentive to actually do things correctly. So that's one. Second one was about the tidy teams. So we've got the complaints. It says that there's been steady stream of complaints, but there's no trend analysis. I was just wondering what steps are being taken to improve the categorization so that you can actually get some meaningful insights.
The separation between the fly tips collected by tidy teams and what are normal.
So 316.
Page number is it?
316. So it says complaints remain steady, been split into stage 1, stage 2, but not categorised by type.
Right, okay. So no trends can be identified.
Yeah.
I thought you were somebody who's going to raise that. Tracy, would you be able to, so this comes from the complaints team by type of fly tips, I think this refers to, isn't it?
It's quite hard to differentiate because the nature of the ICO's work that comes in, the majority of them are multifaceted. So I think over time we found it difficult to actually break down specific complaints that reflect result or come as a part of fly tipping. So I think we do need to do work around that, and we've got Joanne Beasley who works in the service, and she's our complaints and environmental improvement officer. My understanding is that there is a new system that is coming in relation to ICO's work, so we'll pick some of that work up as that new system gets developed and comes into the council. But it is an issue at the moment, and it is difficult for us because I would like to see trend analysis around high fly tipping. I mean, we've got the data, we know where the reported fly tipping is being reported at, and we know where the ad hocs are being picked up from, so we know where our hotspots are, but having that complaint data as a complement would help us in terms of service delivery and targeting our resources.
Do you want to come up on that? You're happy with that?
Chair,
I'm happy with that. But
just on that point, just an extension, really briefly. Causeway is a new technology that we've actually procured, or in the process of procuring, and that it can give more detail on this. Just last month, a couple of weeks ago, which will enhance that amalgamation of where those specific hotspots are, or the categories in which that falls.
Just get a brief note, that'd be fine. Femi,
I think there's a cabinet report on this.
Femi,
there's a cabinet report on that one, so you can feel.
Oh, lovely.
Thank you. I just want to come back to you. You mentioned something that the penalty you do is that you don't collect the bin when you fail. Don't you think that could lead to more fly tipping and health and safety?
Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay, great.
If you aren't putting your bin where it should be, it won't be collected.
And if they don't collect it, don't you think those people can take the bin and put it outside, put it somewhere else, street corners?
You might do that, Femi, but others don't.
Living in Newham.
Yeah. Do you want to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, go on, Carly.
I was just thinking about all the changes that have happened and have taken place. And I'm just wondering, and it goes a little bit to what you were saying, Femi, because blue sky thinking is great, but how have you interconnected the different parts of the service? So when I'm thinking street cleaning, I'm thinking the bins, I'm thinking about the waste, the food, if one is not done, is it going to impact all the others? How is it it's all connected?
Okay, question.
It's all connected because it's in one directorate in the public realm, and they meet in order to ensure that everything's fed into. Right, we've got an issue with fly tipping here. The street cleansing need to go down there because there's been an overspill. So it's totally interconnected. It's synchronised. And if you recall, I think you're in Plasto Neighbourhood Forum, which we can circulate straight after this meeting. We can show how strategically now we understand the hotspots of fly tips, which we didn't previously. And now we can target those resources, both street cleansing and fly tipping, and the tidy teams in order to, and the environment crime team, in order to target those areas a lot more effectively than we did.
No, I haven't got time. Get me on. Just a question. I'm going to bring in on the PFI, if I can. One thing you've not answered: how much is it costing, and how is it going to be funded financially?
The cost of the program, it's
the whole thing, the envelope.
We don't know.
So the question is, what is the?
But answer, I haven't finished the full answer.
The risk to the organisation. How is it funded? How is it going to be engineered?
It will be funded through the levy. We developed an outline business case back last year, which went to your cabinet about 14 months ago, where outline business case, we have forecast savings compared to the current inflated service budget, but all of these procurements are going to be procured completely differently, and therefore we just need to make sure that we run the most competitive procurement to achieve the most affordable contract.
I get that,
but we can't give you figures
right. The background to my question is, I read a lot tonight about capital requirements.
Yeah,
capital being required. The headroom of the organisation for capital is not great.
Yeah.
So how is it going to be funded? So when people say PFI, every PFI is different.
Yeah.
Right? There's no one. So I want to get in my head, how is it going to be funded?
Yeah.
What's the liability for the organisation?
Yeah.
And what's the linkages through from the PFI through to the organisation's balance sheet?
Yeah.
I just want to understand the corporate risks.
Okay, so as Councillor Patel said, the current contract is a PFI, so the future contract will not be a PFI. We are in a PFI contract. We're not looking at procuring a PFI contract or contracts. There will be merchant facilities. So for most contracts, we're not actually looking at capital. We're not looking at building heavily footprinted facilities within Elwa. There is one contract which is for the reception of the waste and the transfer of this waste to these merchant facilities in Jenkins Lane and potentially Frog Island, where investment might be required, but that will be the only contract where capital investment may be needed. But
from the authority?
Those are our assets, yeah.
Right, okay, maybe it's one for you, Miraj, at some point in the future. Could know that you'll be putting cabinet papers forward, but what needs to be, I note in the paper there's a £2 billion cost in 1 year, 1 billion in 7. But what there isn't is a project envelope. So, for example, what is the cost to the organisation? What is the impact on the organisation's balance sheet? What form of PFI it is? We spoke about penalty payments on the streams if we don't get it right. How will those be levied on the organisation? And how will our contingency reserve be? We'd have to put a reserve in our budget to balance off the fine.
If I may clarify capital, sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to say in one sentence that capital will not be Newham's capital. Elwa, as a local authority in itself, will be able to raise capital for its own.
I understand that.
Prudential routes.
But if it, in my head, if it went wrong, someone's got to pay for it, right?
Absolutely.
And we're going to be on the hook for something.
Yeah.
So I work from the worst case scenario. You are, right?
Pessimism.
I am pessimist, right? So the kings for the this committee, what we need to be worried about is the risk to the organisation and the project envelope costs.
Yes.
So at the moment, you're saying it's going to be enveloped around in terms of Elwa, but there must be a link to the organisation be that be revenue or capital, and in your project, in your contract somewhere, there'll be a clause which says if Elwa doesn't make its financials, the boroughs will have to make it up, right? It will be there, right? So I just want to know for the organisation, because we just heard they've got budgetary pressures. And I want to know we're not signing a piece of paper which in 10, 15, 20 years' time is a bad pill.
Right, tell you and I won't be here then.
No, we won't. I'd be on the beach somewhere in France.
I'll keep it brief.
Keep it brief.
With the interest of time, I'm happy to come back on.
Yeah.
I've noted about 6 points.
And we can catch
I'm
up
not
after.
the quickest of
we can talk
of
after.
writers when it comes to pen and paper, but I've noted 6 points. 6 points. Happy to come back to you in detail around that. But essentially, I think the strap line is it depends on disposal and it depends on how much we actually take to Jenkins Lane.
Absolutely right.
And
Absolutely
then
right.
all of the topics around how much we educate, how much we reuse, etc., comes into play. But
I think you
and it's really unfair. Sorry, Chair. It's really unfair to put onto David saying how much is that actually cost, what's the bottom line, what's it, because it boils down to disposal.
Right. I tell you what.
And it boils down to the actual truck going into Jenkins Lane, and those that don't know the process. It gets weighed before it goes in, and it gets weighed before it comes out.
Correct.
And the difference is what we pay as a levy.
What I would say this, right? In setting out the outline, this is one of the biggest external off-balance sheet items this authority will take. Therefore, there's an expectation, there's a baseline assumption in this, and there'll be a cost attaching to it, right? So in those initial conversations, the baseline assumption will be used to inform the organisation whether it wants to proceed with this, right?
That's in the outline business case, which has been passed by them.
Right. Well, okay, but I'm asking my own financial questions because I've just heard today about issues about capital, about budget, and what I'm saying going forward, what we haven't got here, and I can see why it's not here, is the project costs, right? Against, for example, we have a balance sheet of nearly 3 billion quid. How much do we have to offset to carry the liability of this external project, right? So what I'm talking in the realms of financial engineering. I'm also in the realms, as this committee we have to make sure that the residents in the future are not given a cost we haven't asked the questions up front. In summary, what I will say, this is what I'm going to agree with what you're saying. To get the final cost, we've got to do many different things to get there. And it comes to the point I said earlier on when we said about the 50% aspiration to recycling. There is no plan at the moment for that recycling cost. Therefore, you've answered your own question. If we haven't got that plan somewhere, you haven't got the information you need for the outline business case, right? But in final comments, what I will say, there's some very good reports here. And maybe I'm not sure whether you're disappointed everyone has not spoken. However, what I will say, the reports have been excellent. Maybe the questions we would have asked you have been answered here. So first of all, it's very important for me to say as chair, well done on this. The best set of reports I've seen in this committee, and it's important I say that, right?
Would that be minuted, please, Sam?
Be minuted. I've got my gold pen, I'll sign it for you. Also, there's been some very good answers from the political leadership and the officer leadership, and that is to be welcomed and celebrated. And hopefully I've tried to keep it flowing, try and keep it along, but I think the answers have come out, and I think it's been really good. And I think there's a lot of issues to take forward, and bearing in mind the council tax pays for the rubbish, is that right? Is council tax directly paid, or is it just general fund? How does it work? I can't remember now.
Council tax pays for rubbish.
You're right, but there's a charge on there for Elros, isn't it?
No.
There's no charge?
No, there's no surcharge.
There's no surcharge. Yeah, there's no surcharge.
No,
okay.
No.
But
it just rang past.
Yeah, I know. I've got to go and check now. But what I'll say thank you. There's some follow-up, officers. Are there any things I've missed Any instructions I should have done that I've missed it? Have I? You okay?
Within this item,
Yeah.
no.
Thank you. Right, so on this.
Chair, can I, just on a final note, I would love to I think there are some, not misunderstandings, but I think there are gaps, which may cause misunderstanding.
In whose knowledge
No, just generally.
Oh, on your part, perhaps.
General fund, rather than otherwise, but I'd love to catch up on the elements around Elwes specifically.
Of course.
Because it's not straightforward.
I know it is.
It's not
the reason why I ask it, because if we at this committee can outline the risks, right? So we are asking here on the behalf of residents. We're having a conversation about the risks. But if some of those risks are to be dispensed away, fine. But I think in this time, in this pre-phase for the procurement, it's about asking in the round, can we have assurances on this, this and this? And if some of them are relevant, fine. If some of them are not, fine. But I think it's see this as a constructive engagement in the process. I'm asking because of the impact on our finances, you know, it's one of the biggest schemes we've got. There will be a linkage between our balance sheet and this. We need to know what those are. If you don't want to sign a piece of paper and at 10 years down the road, we can't afford it because they're a disaster. But can I thank all of you for your time? Are there any questions for us at all?
Well, I thought you'd never ask.
You know me.
Giving us
But the only thing I would say that when I looked at your forward plan, you still got me down for licensing, and it's not me, it's Councillor Anna Verdi.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
I mean, I love coming here, but I don't need to be.
Are there any?
Sorry, there was just one thing I want to say, and I don't know if I misheard it, but there's not a requirement to do a food waste trial. It's only a requirement to do a food waste collection. So I think there was a little bit of confusion around that. So I just wanted to point that out. We would like to do the trial. We want to do the trial.
We've got to get on with it, haven't we?
Learn a lot from that.
We've got to get on with it.
We need it, but it's not a requirement. It's the food waste collection requirement. So I just wanted to give that
how much
clarity
is
to you.
300 grand for the trial, right?
Yeah.
Of capital. Not or revenue. Could be. Okay.
Right.
Got to be done by 2026.
We can do it. We can find 300. That's right. We'll sort that.
And the actual food waste has got to be done by
2026.
Not the trial.
No. Trial's not necessary. It'd be nice, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Can
I was just going to say there's a fantastic picture on page 1.
Oh, shut up.
Is that of me or is that of me? Thank you. You can go, but we've got some things to do. So we've got to note the work plan. Can we just note that, people?
Noted.
Noted, and Sarah gave us an amendment, but it's Anna Verdi, not herself. The next meeting is in February.
Chair, if I may, there was a comment at the last meeting about cold weather.
Oh, yes.
Briefing, not necessarily report, but a briefing.
But you know, the cold last year when we had a cold weather ice and blah blah blah, we didn't perform very well, and there was a commitment to do better.
Oh, you mean the gritting?
Yes.
They're out tonight.
Brilliant. Yeah. Can we just have an update?
Yes.
No report, just whatever it is. Just
we're starting gritting tonight, so that
Lovely.
Comes out, but we'll show you what the winter plan.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yeah.
Please.
What is it?
Go on. About this.
Go on.
I accept that, and I think that's a really good idea. But when is that going to come? Because there's no point in giving us that after the 25th of February when winter.
Could we have it before?
I can get that within the next.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Everybody noted the work plan?
Yes.
Noted. Great. The next meeting on the 25th.
Isn't that budget?
No. Well, it might be. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Right, going round. Everyone had a good stab at it. Things, what did you get from the meeting? We've done better. Yeah.
It's still
Right, we'll close the meeting in a minute.
Could you just say the time for us?
Okay. Hold on, people. Let's close the meeting. Right. The meeting is 8